Hey, I'm Kevin with Godlike Incorporated, and I'm here in the studio with Erik Rutan from Hate Eternal. We're at his home base, Mono Recording in St. Petersburg, Florida, and Erik is doing some guitar tracks for the new record. And as usual, he is running Maxon Pedals into his variety of high-gain amplifiers to get his guitar tones. So, Erik, tell me about some of the pedals you're using, how you're using them, and which amps you like to use them with.
Okay, well, for this record, thanks to you, I'm using the OD808 Extreme.
Yeah, this is a new model. We just released it a couple months ago, so.
And I've been telling some people about it because a lot of people really like the original OD808, which I enjoy very much as well. What I like about the OD808 Extreme is I'm using it with the JCM 800 Marshall. It's a non-modded Marshall, so it doesn't have a ton of gain. But that's why I love the amp. What this pedal does is just gives it a nice edge to it, and because I'm using the passive pickups, it needs some kind of boost to get kind of the heaviness I'm looking for. Now, the Extreme compared to the original OD808, I feel like the bite is a more higher mid frequency than the OD808, the original, which is kind of a lower mid frequency cut. The first thing I noticed with this pedal when I plugged it in, it definitely has a lot more sizz, I guess I would say, or high end.
Yeah, it's got more gain, more output, and more top end as well.
And that's why it works so perfect with 800.
Yeah.
That I feel like it gives it a nice attack. And like we were discussing, like I was A-B'ing like I usually do. I'll go through all the pedals through whatever amps I'm using. I always use the Marshall JCM 800 on the Hate Eternal guitar tone for tracks 1 and 2, and then blend with something else. But I was going back and forth between the Extreme and the original OD808, and I just felt like this really captured a certain tightness and heaviness, and I liked the attack, so I decided to go with the Extreme.
Awesome. Let's hear it. Okay, so you're using the JCM 800 with the 808X for your primary rhythm tracks 1 and 2 for this new record, but what are you using for tracks 3 and 4? Because you said you like to quadruple track rhythms, so what are you using for that?
I always like to blend amps a lot of time. Not always, but primarily most of the time I'm blending amps because, you know, every amp has a total different gain structure and different frequency response and different grit, you know.
Yeah.
And, the 800 is a very clean, open, very mid-rangey type of sound, the 800, and that's what I love about them. And I decided for this record to use the Mesa Boogie Dual Rec because of that grit and the balls that the Dual Rec has. I blended that with tracks 3 and 4. And usually I'll keep 3 and 4 underneath anywhere from like, you know, I don't know, 5 to 7 dB underneath, just to give me what I'm missing from the main tone of the Marshall. So usually I'll go through different amps and the different pedals. You know, I'll put up the angle up there, I'll put up what other amps I have to see which blends well with whatever I'm doing. In the past I've used the angle for rhythms. This time around I just decided to use a dual rec because I just thought it sounded massive.
Cool. And with the dual rec you're using regular 808, right?
I used the regular 808 because the grit of that with the dual rec just sounds they go hand in hand to me. I think that sounds good with the Marshall as well, and I've been using that. But once I got the Extreme, then I felt like that fit the 800 better. This with the dual rec, and usually, you know, I've got the gain on the dual rec pretty low on most of these amps, with the exception of the 800, because it's not modified and it's not a very high gain amp. But the dual rec, I usually have the gain much more down. This just gives me a little bit of grit. It holds the low end very well, I think. You know, it doesn't thin it out any. And there's something between the dual rec and this that I was just getting that. I just use grit as the word, and clarity at the same time.
Yeah, no, it sounds very full. From the tracks I heard, it's got a thickness to it, but clarity on the top too as well.
And it blends really well.
Yeah.
A lot of times pedals don't blend up necessarily all the time, just like amps don't blend necessarily all the time. This and that, they just blend perfectly together. So I feel like this gave me like a more not as high mid type of cut.
Yeah.
So this gave me what I was missing from the 800.
All right, so Maxon 808 into a dual rectifier. Let's hear it. Okay, so for most of the rhythm tracks on this record, you're using the 808 Extreme, and you're using some of the other Maxon pedals, but you also use the Maxon Super Tube. It just didn't make it to the record. So tell me a little bit about how you like to use this guy, what amps it works best with, and whatnot.
Well, the Super Tube, what I like about it is that it works well with pretty much every amp, in my opinion. The one thing I've noticed about this pedal is that a lot of times when we travel for like individual shows, like we went to Southeast Asia 2 years ago, and we went to South America, and some of the amps needed retubing. Weren't, and I like tube amps, and they weren't really up to snuff. I was able to get away with really dialing it in well because of this pedal. I consider this pedal to me is like the lifesaver pedal, because it, first of all, the gain structure allows you to, even when the tubes are done, you have so much gain in this little pedal, man, that you can get pretty much anything you want out of it. Also, the mid enhance and the tone knobs, as well as the low boost, really come in handy. And I also like the 9 volt, 18 volt switch, because the 18 volt gets a little bit grittier than the 9 volt. But I feel like this pedal, I bring this pedal on tour always, and I don't normally use in my rig. I use the OD808, now the OD808 Extreme. But I do love the way this pedal sounds, because it's just nasty. I mean, it's got a really heavy, gritty sound, and it literally, if there was like one pedal you had to pick that's universal, that will work with lower gain type of amps, this is the one by far. And I have used this on a few records in here. With the 800 specifically.
Because a couple of guys came to us looking for those after those records were done. So.
This pedal, this pedal works great with 800 or any lower gain amp, or any amp period. I think it's a quality pedal, and I enjoy it a lot.
So for rhythms, we got 808 and 808 Extreme. How about for solos and harmony parts and things like that? What pedals are what Maxon pedals are rocking your boat for this recording?
Well,
right now? We have plenty of them over here.
Well, I've got a bunch of, like with this record, there's a lot of dynamics on different parts. So I have like 4 or 5 different tones that I'm going to be working with to add different textures to the album. And there's a few parts that have like a really different kind of, I don't know, individual tone that I'm going to use the JMP Marshall with.
Okay.
Because the JMP, if anyone's familiar with the JMP, it just has a very unique characteristic to it that I like. This pedal, I think, sounds incredible with the JMP, the Maxon OD820.
That's a big Zeus favorite for trying guitars.
Cool. I mean, this is a great pedal. I think it sounds really amazing with the JMP. And honestly, it's the only amp that I've used it with, I think, is the JMP. It sounds really good with it. It's rich and heavy. But it has a very distinct character to it that I'm not sure how to really even decipher it.
Yeah.
It's
It's
kind
a
of its
it's a
own
unique
animal.
pedal. It's kind of a booster and overdrive combined, running at 18 volts, so it's got a lot of headroom. So it kind of does. You can get a little cleaner, kind of punchier boost type of effect with it.
And a lot of gain.
Yeah.
Because the
yeah.
JMP
Yeah, there's a fair amount of gain
is
too
way
if you want
cleaner
it.
than the
Yeah.
800 even, but when
Yeah.
you put this thing on there,
Yeah.
it
It's also
kicks
slamming
it.
the front end of the amp really hard too. So.
It sounds, and you know, I might make a run at that
Yeah.
still, but this one I definitely will be using with the JMP.
Cool. And what about this guy? Last but not least, OD9
Well-
Pro Plus.
Well, this is the pedal that I use always, pretty much religiously for solos. A lot of times to the Angle Powerball,
Yeah.
because the Angle has just a lot of options. You know, I mean, first of all, it's 4 channels. You know, I like the low gain channel myself because the low gain still has a lot of gain. So I usually end up backing off the gain a lot to get this, because with this pedal, what I like about the Soul is it allows me to get a lot of harmonics and things like that. You know, I'm really big on holding notes and trying to force harmonics out of it, and this gives me a really nice sustain and a richness with the tonality. So I feel like this, even with like something like an Angle, you don't necessarily need a pedal to use with that
Yeah.
amp. But I like the characteristic that this pedal adds to the Angle for my solos. And I've been using this. I've used it with the LeBogue and some other things, but I've used this on many records as well. I mean, pretty much all these pedals. I mean, 4 out of 5 records that have come out of here in the last 8 years since I've been using Maxon probably are using Maxon pedals in some variants or another, because I just really think these pedals are the best.
Awesome. So there you have it. Erik Rutan, mono recording, and Maxon. Check us out online at maxonfx.com. New Hate Eternal coming at you soon. I'm Kevin from Godlake signing off.
And I'm Rutan from Hate Eternal Mono Recording Studios. Maxon and Metal.